Well, good morning again, and it's good to have you here. It's an exciting time around the church today in that it's a checkpoint for me, a halfway checkpoint. Now, I don't know about you, but some of you were here in January when we began a message series called Improvement for Impact. How many of you were here around the time that we did that? So of you. And during this message series of Improvement for Impact, in January and February, we focused on the part that each of us wanted to make improvements in various areas of our life, or in our life in general, but in specific areas of our life, so that we could improve in those areas so we can make a better impact in the world. We wanted to make a better impact in our family. We wanted to make a better impact at our work. We wanted to make a better impact in our school. We wanted to make a better impact in the church. We wanted to make a better impact with our friends and so forth. And we targeted 5 particular areas. And I'm not sure if any of you remember them, but we said we wanted to improve spiritually. And we said we wanted to improve spiritually, that we felt like if we had some spiritual improvement in our life, that would help us to make a better impact in the world. We wanted to improve relationally in terms of with our relationships with each other. We wanted to improve financially. That was a lot of us. A lot of us had some financial issues that we were either spending too much or had issues with stuff, couldn't, just whatever they were, some burdens that was on us financially. And we said if we can just improve financially, we feel like that we could make a better impact in the world. We wanted to improve physically. Some of us had some health issues. Some of us were a little bit overweight. Some of us were not eating properly. Some of us had sugar problems and still were dealing with that. We all had just various issues that we were dealing with physically that we said if we could improve somewhat in this area of our life, that would help me make a better impact in the world or for the kingdom of God. And then the last one was to improve with our attitude. That if some of us had a bad attitude, or our attitude was hidden beneath all this other stuff that was over us, but we had like maybe anger built up in us or frustration built up about all kinds of stuff, and it flowed out as our attitude and others saw the attitude. And so we focused on this. 2 months we went week by week, and we went through and we talked about what we're going to do, and we all tried to set goals for ourselves, what we want to do in those 5 areas. Well, this morning I need to give you a progress report on myself and on those 5 areas. And I'm sad to say, I failed miserably. I have failed miserably in not just one of those areas, not just 2 of those areas, but I failed in all 5 of those areas. Now, this morning is not about where you failed, but I want to talk to you about my failures. Okay? But maybe you can relate to failures. But I started out very good. I was real focused. I had my phone. I put alarms in there. I did stuff like, I put alarms in there. And do y'all remember me talking about that? I put alarms in there at certain times to pray for certain things. An alarm would go off, and I'd stop what I was doing. I'd say a brief prayer. I mean, my day started out back then, early on, 6:07, because I'm a 7 person. I never ended a number in 7. So the alarms go off at 6:07, 6:17, 6:27, 6:37, 6:47, 6:57. I had all these alarms in there, and it would pop up with the names of people I pray for. Praying for my wife, praying for Chris and Caitlin and Morrison, praying for Brian and Addie, praying for Dan, praying for my family, praying for others, praying for individuals. Jeremy, you were on there. You remember? I'd tell you sometimes. I'd say, I'm texting you saying, I'm praying for you now. There were certain things that I was praying for. And I was going to the gym, Charlie. We were going 3 days a week, and I was in the gym, and I was working out and doing stuff, and I was doing stuff, Marcus, on the other side. You know what I'm saying? Jose, y'all do this stuff. And I was working out aside going, this is going to help me get better. I was taking times on my calendar blocked out to have time to go eat with Jody and spend time with her and work on my relationship with my wife, to spend time with my children and go do something with them. I had all kinds of things in there. I was working on my attitude. I mean, I tried not to get ticked off, and it was really hard because there was things that really ticked me off. But I didn't want to let anybody know they ticked me off, so I tried to control my attitude. I tried to take deep breaths. I had systems in place. I had things going. And I failed. life happened. I can give you the excuses that I'm out kayaking and or whatever that thing is in the pond, and it was a kayak, and my phone gets wet, and I lost all of my alarms, and I had to go get a new phone. I had to do all that, and I got the new phone. I couldn't figure out, and never had the time to put them back in, and that's just an excuse. I failed. I failed at prayer time. There was times in the past months that I've caught myself beginning to eat without saying the blessing. That's nothing to you. That's a bunch to me. What in the world has gone on with me, Lord, that I'm such a failure? I struggle with it. I'm struggling with it. I basically hit the wall. Like I say, I went out wide open, on fire. Yes, I'm talking to everybody. And I had accountability people hold me accountable. And then I drifted away. We changed offices during that time. I lost my books. I almost lost my religion in this whole switching of two offices, but I didn't. I can't find anything. You ever been like that where just everything is just a mess? And it doesn't seem to get better no matter how much I try to organize, how much I try to change, it just continues. And all 5 of these areas suffered because of that. And the truth is, my progress disappeared. In fact, I weigh more now than I did when I started this. My attitude sucks. I'm so disappointed in myself. I'm so hurt at myself. I'm so just a failure. I can't even look at myself in the mirror. I can't. I sit here and I try to get my head wrapped around it. I'm going, but you're a preacher. You read the Word and you do this. But it's like, it's just my devotional life was empty. I'm reading stuff and they would be flickers every so often, but I've sunk into a hole. And it seems like that the deeper the hole is that I've gotten into, Satan keeps throwing dirt on top of me to not let me out. Now, I don't know if you've ever been there before. I don't know if you've ever, it's not the commitments that I make to Marcus or make to Charlie or I make to you. And it's the commitments I made to God. But honestly, that hurts what I made to God, but it hurts more. I made commitments to myself and I failed myself. And that's just the truth. Because see, I failed God I don't know how many times. I failed God over and over and over again. I have failed Him so many times it's unbelievable. But I've learned not to make myself promises because it hurts when I fail myself. I'm not saying it shouldn't hurt when I fail God, but it hurts when I fail myself. You know what I'm talking about? Some of us don't even tell people when we make those commitments because we don't want nobody else to know because we're hedging our bet against failure. So I'm standing before you now as your pastor and I'm telling you I failed. And I failed miserably. And so I've lost so much ground, I don't know what to do. I've lost confidence in myself. I've lost confidence. I want to blame others. There are days I don't even want to be around people. Me. The person who talks all the time. The person who people say could talk to a signpost and carry on a conversation. And I can. And I don't even want to be around people. Because all these people do is remind me of my failures. They're talking about everything else, but they're reminding me about what I failed again to do for them as a pastor, for what I failed to do on these 5 areas of my life spiritually, physically, attitude, relationally, and financially. And more importantly, how I failed God. See, what I've come to realize during this period of time is that shame over our past failures and our past sins can haunt and inhibit us in so many different ways. In fact, Satan will try to seek and destroy your faith or my faith by shoving our failures in your face. You ever felt like that? You ever felt like this? Just like, man, just look, why even try that again? You just failed. You'll just mess up again. Don't try to work on another relationship. Don't try to improve yourself physically. Don't work to try to patch up that argument you and your friend have, because you're just going to fail. You're just going to make it worse. Don't try to get involved in some type of small group or some type of activity, because you're just going to fail again. You've tried. You said you made promises and you broke promises, and that's why you don't even want to be here sometimes. And Satan just keeps working it and working it and working it into you. So I'm still praying. And I'm praying, I'm still trying to read, but not at the level that I was. You understand what I'm saying? But it was still something. It was like there's these coals. The fire had burned down, but there's these coals. And they were still there. I mean, I've had fires in my backyard in the fire pit, and 3 days after the fire, it'd be rain, torrential rains would come. Just flooding rain. And 3 days later, I could go in there and stir down around in those coals, and they would be something there, and it'd be warm. And I could throw some stuff back on there, and I could get a fire started back. And so one of the things I did was I started going back and looking at things, and I went back through my notes of stuff that affected me back in the day. Do you understand what I mean? Stuff that resonated with me. Here's a commercial. It's an old commercial of one that I watched, and things began to change for me. Can you show this commercial? You turn it up louder.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
That was an old Nike commercial back in the day when Michael Jordan was playing. Now, there's arguments now about LeBron James and all the stuff. The Western and finals are over, the Eastern finals are over, and the NBA championship game is going to be coming up starting this coming June the 1st. Thursday, June the 1st, right? We got it marked. We've been waiting on this game. For those of us that watch the playoffs, I don't watch the regular season, I just watch the playoffs, but we're ready for this game. But here's the thing. They're just arguing about LeBron, and there's this Steph Curry and all this, but Michael Jordan was the man in the day. I'd say he'd be the man today. Just age got him. But that video. Then the next thing you know, I'm watching other videos. You know, Michael Jordan switched and went to baseball, right? He switched after his father's dad died. It had so much impact on him. It was like that. You can't get any more down than Michael probably was at that time. He didn't care. He lost his father and lost the love of the game of basketball. And didn't know where to go and was digging himself into a hole. And he went to try out for baseball. If you remember, he was on the White Sox farm team. I went back and looked at videos of Michael's coaches in the baseball. And they said, Michael came out here, and you got all these young rookies in their 20s and whatever in the farm system, younger guys, and here Michael is older. And they said Michael would be there at practice before any of them got there. Some days he'd be there before the coaches got there. And every day after a full slate of practice, every day about all they had, he would ask the batting coach, because he was terrible, couldn't hit a curveball, terrible. He'd ask the batting coach, can you work with me some more? Can you work with me some more? Work with me some more. And that batting coach, they showed him, and Michael would say, I almost got it. Just throw me a couple more pitches. I almost got it. They said, all of those coaches said, we have never seen someone work that hard to improve. So what did Michael Jordan have that I don't have? What does Michael Jordan have that you don't have? That when you fail, when you struggle, when you become something that's not who you are, and you know it, but you know there's something greater inside of you, something that you're called to be, something that you're called to make a difference in this world, and you know it, but you're not there. Michael went back to the basics. He started practicing. What did it say over close to 4,000 games? Some number he said that he lost, or 3,000 or whatever the number was. I can't remember. 26 times, I think it said, at that point, he had been entrusted with the game-winning shot. Other people entrusted him to say, you take the shot. And he missed. And I don't know if you get that or not. That means 26 of those losses was on his shoulder because he took the shot. And then he says, because he failed so many times, is why he succeeded. I'm going to be working with you guys over the next several weeks and myself on what we're going to call this message series, Imperfect Progress. See, I think what's gotten to happen in our world is people think progress has got to look a certain way. You understand? It's got to look, it's got to be this way. But I'm here to tell you that sometimes your failures are the opportunities for God to develop you in order to refine you, in order to get you to the point so you can progress closer and further in all these areas of your life. You can't have success without failure. Satan wants to take that failure and let it bury you. God wants to take that failure and build you. And that's what we don't see. Now, historically, this is evident throughout the Bible. It's in the Bible. Listen to this passage in Mark chapter 2. It says, as Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, who he later would name Peter, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Peter's over there minding his own business. He's fishing. He's doing his thing. And Jesus comes by and he says, come and follow me. That's all he said. Come and follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. He cast a vision for him. You come and follow me, and I'm going to have you fish for people. I'm not going to have you fish for fish anymore. Now, I want to let you understand this. If you just went on that one scripture for a while, fish for people. I don't know about you, but every time you cast your nets out, you don't catch anything. You with me? They didn't fish rod and reel. They fished through their nets out. You know how many times they cast and caught nothing? I can tell you one time there's a time that they fished all night long and didn't catch anything. And then Jesus said, you throw your nets on the other side, and guess what? They caught so many they couldn't even get them in the boat. See, you go fishing without Jesus, you ain't going to catch anything. And too many churches and too many people in the church have been fishing without Jesus. And that's why people aren't around them. That's why they can't make an impact in the world, because they keep trying to do it on their own. See, Jesus chose Peter, this fisherman. But understand this about Jesus. He knew Peter better than Peter knew himself. Do you believe that? Do you believe God or Jesus knows you better than you know yourself? Do you know how I know this? In John chapter 2, this is what it says. But Jesus did not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He did not need any testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person. He did not entrust himself to them because he knew what was inside of each person. He knows you. He knows not only your heart, he knows your inclination. He knows all there is to know about you. He knew it about Peter. And still he said, come and follow me. If he knew everything about him, then he knows that at some point in time that he would be there with people would be saying, you need to go back into Jerusalem, and there'd be an argument break out among the disciples. And they would say, Peter would say, you can't go back, they'll kill you. And Jesus said to Peter, who he called, get behind me, Satan, because you ain't got my ways in the way of the world. You're trying to do what everybody else wants to do. I got to do what my Father said. Jesus knew that Peter, when he hit that point, would want to tap out. We can't go back, we might get killed. But he still chose him. We talk about over and over the things that happened. Peter denied Jesus in the garden. Does anybody remember that story? Or not in the garden, he's outside the thing. They said, do you know Jesus? He denied him 3 times, right? You remember that? 3 times. How in the world do you pick somebody that's going to deny even knowing you if you knew what's in them? There was one time they were talking about who the greatest was. This was in the upper room at the end of Jesus' ministry, toward the end. It's the last time he has dinner with them. And they're having this Passover meal, and they began to talk about during the meal who's going to be the greatest among all the disciples, who's going to be better, who's going to do this and that and the other. And Jesus starts telling them, man, you don't see it. You got to serve. I've come here serving you. You have to serve. It's about what the vision is. Remember what he called Jesus? When Jesus called Peter, what he first said? He said, I'll make you, what? Fishers of men. I'll make you fishers of men. Make you sort of sounds like I'm going to mold you. I'm going to shape you. I'm going to form you. I'm going to have some involvement just exactly like my Father did when He pulled you up from dirt and breathed air into your lungs and you became a human being. I'm going to make you into this thing that will fish for people. He knew he was going to fail. In fact, listen to what it says in verse 26 of Matthew. He says, this is another one. I'm sorry, I just skipped ahead of myself. He said in Matthew 26, this is after he was up in the area praying. He took the 3 of them together in the Garden of Gethsemane and they were praying. And he come back and said, y'all 3 pray here and I'll be back in a minute. And Jesus goes over here to pray and then he comes back and they're asleep. He says this to him. He returned to the disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you keep watch with me for 1 hour? Now just let that soak a minute. I mean, that sounds like a little thing, right? Doesn't that sound like what Jesus is saying? It's like, it's not this big thing you got to do. It's not the big things I'm looking for. Can't you do this little thing? I'm about to go through I'm about to take all the burdens of sins of the world on my shoulders, and you can't be with me for an hour. You can't do this little thing. You can't stay awake. He says, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. And then he says this, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. You think that might be what the temptation is? We all have this spirit inside of us willing to want to do better. But our physical body is weak. So maybe what the temptation is to not stay connected with your spirit that's calling you to greater things and succumb to your body that says, I need to eat more, I need to drink more, I need to party more, I need to do this. It's all about me. Rather than about that spirit inside of you that God Himself breathed into your life and into mine. See, again, when I go back to that other illustration I was going to tell you, or that other story, when Jesus was talking to them and they were talking about who was the greatest, after telling them all it's about serving. And this is before this other part happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus singles Peter out from all of them. And listen to what He says. And I honestly believe that's what He says to each one of us who give our life to Christ and want to move from being a follower of Christ to being a disciple of Christ. He says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. Sift you as wheat. Sifting of wheat means you've got the wheat and you've got the impurities. You've got the husk. You've got the other parts of the grain. And he's saying Satan has asked to sift Peter. Why would Satan ask that? See, Satan is banking on there being more husk and impurities than they are good. And that when he sees that, Jesus will give up on him. You with me? That's the only thing that I'm seeing. Why would Satan want to sift him? Why would he want to make him better? He's wanting to show how bad he is. I want to sift the bad out and throw away this good. Look at what Peter is. Look at what this rock is. You're going to build on this? And God's going, no, thanks a whole lot, Satan. I'm not building on that. That part you just disposed of, that's what I'm building on. That's the good I'm building on. He says, Satan has asked to sift you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. What's your faith in today? And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Now, I don't know if you get it. Jesus told him right there, you're turning back. Because I know you. I know great things are in you. And I know that your circumstances of life has beaten some of those out, but they are nothing but sifting you. It's what I'm going to use to refine you to create this person, this being who cares, who loves, who forgives, who serves, who gives hope and encouragement, who no longer focuses on their weaknesses, but focuses on the strength that I've put in them. And so as I preach this to you, I preach it to myself. As I say these things to you, I say it to myself. God, I failed in what my objective was to do, or what I felt like I had prayed about these things that you wanted me to do at the beginning of the year. You wanted me to improve spiritually. You wanted me to improve relationally. You wanted me to improve financially. You wanted me to improve physically. And you wanted me to improve relationally. With my attitude. I prayed over those things and felt strong that that's what it was in that time. You with me? But then all the other stuff that Satan has put to sift me, I keep jumping in the pile with the impurities and thinking that's who I am. And I'm telling you, it's time to get out of that pile and get back in with the good wheat. It's time to get in with the good. The title of this is Imperfect Progress. Part of progress is failing sometimes because it identifies where you need to work at. David, a man after, quote, God's own heart. David failed numerous times. But when he failed, he would go on his face and say, God, help me. No system will fix these things in you. No alarms. They are just tools to help you along the way. You have to decide what you want. And that has to be in tune with what God desires from you. Here's how arrogant I am in my prayer life. This past week, I'm praying for one of my children. And in my prayer life, I'm praying. And I'm praying, and I say, God, help me help him. Help me help him. And I'm praying with everything I've got. Help me help him. And I felt, I didn't hear a voice. I didn't hear, you understand, people, God talks to them in different ways and you hear them in different ways. I didn't hear a voice, but I felt this. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm going to say I heard it. I sensed this. I felt this. When I'm saying, help me help him, God was like, I'm already helping him. Why don't you join me? See how arrogant I am? I'm thinking it all revolves around me. It revolves around God. God is already at work in those areas of your life and in those circumstances or situations of your life that you are struggling with. God is already at work. And it's not about whether you can see it, whether you can understand it, or whether you can fathom it. I'm telling you, God is already at work in those areas of your life. What you have to do is trust God and keep working to being the person He's called you to be. And you begin with that. How I'll end this up. Peter after denying Jesus 3 times. I'm going to ask that the band comes on up. Peter, after denying Jesus 3 times. Jesus is crucified, dead. Disciples run into hiding. Jesus is resurrected. The first ones that know that he's resurrected are the women. The women come and tell the guys. The disciples, some of them believe, some of them don't. They go through that whole doubting Thomas thing, put your fingers here, all the things that go on like that. And then Jesus starts appearing to them over a 50-day period or 40-day period after his resurrection. And as he's appearing to them, he's talking with them, and he's talking about deep stuff. He's explaining stuff they didn't get. He's explaining stuff to them, I believe, about their failures. Because he knows that they all ran and hid. He knows that they didn't have anything to do. You know what I'm saying? They all were hiding. But now, he's not done building on him. He didn't go and show himself to everybody else in the world. You're my man. You're it. Peter, I'm still building it on you. And remember, Peter denied him 3 times. Listen to this. So they were fishing one day, and this is the story where they see that he's coming in. They swim in. Jesus has got a campfire going. He's cooking some fish there. Peter jumps in, swims there. He don't even wait on the boat. They row the boat in, get all these fish in that Jesus has told them where to catch them at. And remember the story I told you? They never weren't catching anything, and then he tells them to throw them out there, and he's like, I think that's Jesus. And Peter's gone. He's out of there. Peter, who denied him, just swims and just leaves everything and swims to Jesus. Isn't that where the story started? He was fishing. He didn't have to be told to follow him. He jumps out of the boat and goes on in there. It says, when they had finished eating, and so they cook and they eat, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Well, yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, well, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The 3rd time, he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? 3 times. Now, some people say that the 3 times he asked him these questions was to go back to the 3 times that Jesus denied him. I don't know if it's tied to that as much as it's tied to this. Peter's never forgiven himself for his failures. Peter hasn't forgiven himself for denying Jesus. He'll jump in, he'll go be at church, he'll go do all the things, but he ain't forgave himself for the time that he promised to love and serve him and didn't. He's not gonna forgive himself for the times that he said he was going to be this type of man or this type of woman, and he wasn't. He hadn't forgave himself. And so you got to get that out of you. You got to get that sifted out, and then you don't go with the bad stuff. See, he's sifting him. See, Satan had used these things to sift him, to show him bad. God's saying, let's get rid of this. Because he goes on saying, Jesus says, or it says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And then Peter was hurt. Because Jesus asked him a 3rd time. Let me tell you something. Changing hurts. Forgiving yourself hurts. Becoming the person God's called you to be hurts. It hurts when you fail. It hurts to get back up when you've been knocked down. When life circumstances, your choices have put you down, it hurts to get back up. He said, Lord, you know all things, and you know that I love you. Well, see, if we go back to that other scripture, of course he does. See, God knows that you love him. Jesus knows that you love him and you want to do better. But you got to say it. You've got to say it. You know I love you. That's something you've got to say to him. And you've got to mean it because he already knows it. You can't fake it. He's not looking at your failures. He's looking and listening for you to say those words. Then he says, Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger and dressed yourself and went where you wanted, But when you are old and stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. They talk about that, and it says that Jesus said this to indicate the type of death of which Peter would glorify God. Just let me get this. Who's leading him? Who's leading him? Do you understand the magnitude of this statement? When you're older, when you're mature, when you move along, other people are going to take you where you don't want to go. And they're going to lead you where you don't want to be led because, didn't it say they will take you where you don't want to go? This is what it says. But the reason he went is not because they were leading him, because he didn't let go of Jesus. See, he could have denied Jesus then and wouldn't have been led to his death. You with me? He could have ran and hid. When they go to take him and arrest him, go hide. But he don't hide. And see, when you follow him, he takes you to that place. And you can look at that and say that to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would, here's the key, would glorify God. Guys, we all going to die. Not a single person here is going to be absent of death. But will your life and death glorify God? It will when you say, God, you know everything. You know I love you. And when he said that, then Jesus said to him, follow me. And we start, or we end, and we restart where we began. Just follow me. So we sing this closing hymn. I want you to consider who you're following. I want you to consider every mistake, every failure you ever had. I want you to consider every one of them. And I want you to pile them up, and I want you to let them be gone. And let's start over again. That's what it means to make imperfect progress. We take our failures, and we allow God to make them into progress toward Him. Father God, as we close out with this song, I pray that you would continue to work within our hearts, allowing us to hear your voice of where you're speaking to us. Now, Lord, it'd be so easy to sit in a chair and be in this room and say, he must be talking about such and such, my wife, my sister, my mama, my cousin. Lord, it's not what I'm talking about. It's what you're saying to these people in their spirit now. Allow them to be open and receptive to hear you calling them as you ask, do you love me? I pray that you would give them the courage and the strength to say, yes, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. Let them hear again those words that you called them with before. Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men.